I actually met Jeff once a little over 10 years ago at the Toronto Pro Show in Canada, and my interaction with him was very brief. And in that brief interaction, I thought to myself, wow, this guy's a conceited little douchebag. And my thoughts and feelings have never changed because I don't really like his style of content. I've always felt that Jeff just flashes these papers on his screen, he says the word science, everybody creams their pants, and they think that everything that he says is just the truth because it's backed by science. Well, we're starting to realize that, you know what, maybe that really isn't the case. Well, I say we. I've always thought that way. And if these videos by Solomon Nelson on Mike Israetel and Jeff Nippard should have taught you anything, it should be this. There is a difference between being a science-based content creator, which Solomon Nelson is, and then people who use science as a brand identity, because that's what Mike and Jeff do. We've already discussed Mike Israetel, Mr. I'm smarter than you at everything when it comes to fitness because I am, in fact, Dr. Mike. And as far as Jeff is concerned, a lot of things are coming to light that a lot of you probably didn't want to believe or had no idea was Jeff's real personality. But I've known this for quite some time. I felt it the instant I met him a little over 10 years ago. And when I talk about him flashing studies and things like that, this is Jeff's style of content. Now, don't get me wrong. He does have some good content out there. I'm not going to sit here and say that his body of work is garbage. I do want to say that he hides behind science as a brand identity. He goes on these websites, he finds studies that are interesting, and then he builds entire videos around those pieces of paper that he shows on the screen and highlights. Come to find out, his scientific research isn't always the greatest. And we've learned this by watching the Solomon Nelson video. And I agree with Movement with Maddie. If Solomon has taught me anything in this beef, it's not to with real nerds. Because when you disrespect a real nerd, especially one that you hired in the past to come in and help fix your science-based programs, you find yourself caught in this situation. What's even more interesting about this situation, now that all these messages and emails are coming to light, is that Jeff is deleting the comments that he's leaving online. But maybe Jeff doesn't understand that we live in 2025 and that when you are a high-profile person leaving comments in a situation that's being talked about by everyone, as soon as that comment is sent, within 0.0001 second, 10 people have probably already screenshotted it, and it's going to live forever on YouTube. And so I went to Solomon Nelson's video on Jeff Nippard. I scrolled through the comments. I cannot find the comment that Jeff left because he probably deleted it. And I know it's not here because a comment from Jeff on a video titled, Jeff Nippard, my former client, has turned nasty, would be towards the top. It probably would have gotten thumbs up a gazillion times just so people could see it. So going through the top comments here, I scrolled through a bunch of pages. Of course, there's a Greg Doucette comment here. Time to invest in Netflix with all the documentaries I'm about to unleash. Might not be a bad idea. The comment doesn't exist. And if I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section below. I can't find it. But we do have a little piece of what it says here. Joey B happened to find the comment. Big shout out to Joey B. Okay, I do want to honestly apologize for downplaying the program work you did with me. I shouldn't have done that. And I'm going to go over all of this. I know not all of you have watched the complete Solomon Nelson video. You definitely should. I'll link to it below, but we'll get to that in a second. If I remember right, as for my comments about the Mike stuff, I stand by my belief that your critique of his thesis was motivated by obsessive hate. That doesn't invalidate your critique, but it doesn't quite sit right with me. Definitely felt like a character, whatever he said. The problem with this statement right here is that it doesn't matter what the motivation is, whether you're motivated by hate, whether you're motivated by love. Anyone could go to the website, download the dissertation, read it, and make the same kind of video that Solomon Nelson did, because it's just that bad. So the fact that he's saying, it doesn't still quite sit right with me. What doesn't sit right with you? That your hero uploaded a terrible dissertation, lied about it, said it wasn't the real draft. You guys both had your communities go after Solomon Nelson, only to come to find out that it was the real draft. because Mike and his team got caught allegedly editing the draft to try to make it better, and it didn't work out, and he fell on his face. Is that what doesn't quite sit right with you? All the lies and deceit? Like, I'm really concerned as to what doesn't sit right with you, Jeff. You can't back your way out of this one. And this is why I went so hot on Jeff when he was caught bringing Hussein and Julian for this how to look enhanced without steroids bullshit video that he did, right? Because he wanted the clout. And that's why he's inserting himself into these situations. He wants to stick up for his friends. He wants the clout. He's bringing dudes on his channel that shouldn't be there. So many red flags around Hussein and Julian. Brought him on anyways. Everybody called him out, and then he does what he does best, and what has always worked from him in the past, is he tries to play the victim. I'm sorry, guys, I'll take my L, blah, blah, blah. And everyone just kisses his ass because he's Jeff Nippard and he's backed by science. Well, it doesn't seem like it's happening that way for you this time, Jeff. You might have to actually take responsibility for your actions, because what you did to Solomon Nelson, it's bad for a few different reasons. And the reason that's worst of all is that this guy was one of your biggest fans, and you did him this dirty. This guy genuinely saw your videos, loved your channel, saw your programs, saw that they were flawed, and at the time, instead of trying to call you out and make you out to be this person who really doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to training, he wanted to help you. He wanted to be your friend, and you still did him this dirty, because I would say your ego is just as big as Mike's. Let me play this clip for you guys, for those of you who haven't watched the video that Solomon Nelson did, because this is sad.
This chapter describes my rich history with Jeff Nippard, which will nicely contextualize his recent attacks on me. As a teenage lifter, I was a huge admirer of Jeff's. He was, at one point, my favorite content creator.
For those of you who don't know where that cartoon scene is from, that's from the movie Incredibles. And the reason why it's so important is because the character on the right, his name is Buddy, he idolizes the guy on the left, Mr. Incredible. He's his hero. He wants to be just like him. He's making all these inventions so he can be a superhero. And Mr. Incredible is constantly dismissing him and telling him to go home. They have this big blowout. And then in the movie, the main villain is this guy named Syndrome, who is the kid on the right grown up. And he grows up to be a super villain and basically go after Mr. Incredible and his family because Mr. Incredible was so mean to him. That's why the context of this scene is so powerful, because Solomon Nelson, as he's saying here, was a massive fan of Jeff Nippard, tried to help him, consulted him, and was still dismissed. And that is why we have a 50-minute video titled, Jeff Nippard, My Former Client, Has Turned Nasty. So if you've never seen this movie, you may not understand the impact of it, but that's why it's here.
My favorite content creator. However, I grew disillusioned with him upon reading several of his frankly terrible training programs. And when I say terrible, I truly mean it.
So why is there so much emphasis placed around Jeff's programs being terrible, and why should we care as much as we do? Well, because he's Mr. Science, and everything he says and tells his community to do is backed by science. So what ends up happening? His community blindly follows every single thing that he says because he flashes pieces of paper on his screen when he edits his videos. He highlights little sections. He says the word science about 10 to 15 times per video, and you're supposed to just believe what comes out of his mouth because he's Jeff Nippard. But let's see what Solomon has to say.
There are lots of bad training programs out there. So why single out Jeff? I gave 3 reasons in my video. 1, he should be held to a higher standard.
Because he's brainy and informed, I think many people would pretty much believe anything that he says. And so we should hold
Exactly
Jeff to a higher standard than other people in the fitness industry.
2, his failures cause self-blame.
When the program fails you, you're not going to blame the program or its author for failing you, but rather, you're going to blame yourself.
And that's why we have such a big problem with people claiming natty when they're not, in case it hasn't been made clear, and enough people have talked about it, which is why we all got so pissed off and upset with Jeff when he decided to bring on Hussein and Julian to his channel, right? That's why I made like 5 videos about it, because he's telling you that you can look like these guys naturally. They just have amazing genetics. But if you go and try their workout programs, clearly their workout programs work, because there's a 99.9% chance they could be 100% natural, despite all the red flags that everybody pointed out. And what ends up happening, you do these programs that aren't well thought out. You don't get the actual information you need to progress with your training. You start to think that you're the problem and that, you know what, maybe you're just not cut out to have the physique of your dreams because you're not seeing any progress. When in fact, the problem is stemming from the program and the advice you're getting to begin with. So that's why that's a pretty big deal. And I didn't know this. I never really thought of Jeff as someone who wouldn't be natural. But I was watching Joey B's video on the critique, and I guess a lot of people are actually calling Jeff out for his earlier physique and how he looked when he competed as probably, or there's a good chance he might not be natural because he wouldn't have been able to develop the physique based on his own training advice. Let's hear what Joey has to say.
Jeff doesn't know how to program. Jeff doesn't know how to train. And that's actually why a lot of people out there say, hey, I don't believe that Jeff was always full lifetime natural. There's plenty of people out there who believe that. Now, I don't know. I don't care. It really doesn't matter to me. But the point is that you have a lot of people out there who see the way he trains and say, hey, if you train like this, you're not going to look, how you looked in your peak condition.
And that's what Solomon said. So let's get back to the video.
You're going to think, maybe I'm not cut out for this strength training thing.
And 3, his failures damage evidence-based training.
In short, the fact that it's Jeff who's written a bad program and not Joe Sixpack magnifies the damage. It'll decrease people's faith in evidence-based training.
As a fledgling fitness content creator, with absolutely zero understanding of the dark magic that is turning my arguments into views, I assumed that my critique of Jeff's program would get no traction and quickly be forgotten.
And it did get traction, and it led to them actually establishing a relationship. Now, fast forward to where we are today. Jeff is making these posts, defending Mike Israetel, and just completely downplaying every single thing. And that's why this video was created, because Jeff was completely downplaying everything that Solomon Nelson pointed out about the Mike Israetel dissertation that was posted to the university website. And these 2 comments right here have since been removed by Jeff himself. By the way, Solomon, if you're watching this video, your sense of humor is totally my sense of humor, and I bursted laughing quite a few times during your video. And Saint Mike here with this photo, dude, like, oh, let me hit play.
Bro was out here adding semicolons to Mike's rough draft from 13 years ago, thinking he did something.
So you guys all saw the same 70-minute video that we saw that Solomon Nelson made on Mike Israetel's dissertation. It wasn't just semicolons being added. The entire thing needed to be redone. It was so terrible. And so for Jeff to come out here and downplay it, which is what he always tries to do, he tries to weasel his way out of shit, he tries to play the victim, and he tries to make things not such a big deal. That's what he's doing with this comment. So let's see what Solomon has to say.
Jeff, was that all I did in the video? Did you mean that adding semicolons was the full extent of my critique? It's true that I observed irregularities with semicolons and other conventions. But for scientist Jeff to mention them alone, while neglecting the careful argument about the dissertation's content, was a tendentious half-truth. Jeff drew attention to the technical punctuation stuff and ignored the rest, which is...
And that's exactly what Jeff tried to do. He tried to steer the conversation because he's trying to run cover for Mike, and he knows that his community is going to believe whatever he says, and he also knows that the majority of his community isn't going to watch the full 70-minute video that Solomon Nelson did on Mike Israetel. So the easiest thing for Jeff to do to run cover so that people don't talk about it is to do a post like that where he says, oh, it was just some semicolons and grammar. It was nothing that big. And then what happens? the millions of people that follow Jeff and Mike are just going to repeat that same thing, and then that half-truth becomes fact because that's all people are talking about. Oh, yeah, Solomon Nelson called out Mike, but Jeff said it was just semicolon, so whatever, he's a loser, he just wants clout and attention, and that's why he made his video. And that's what almost started to happen, but then other YouTubers, myself included, started making videos, and people started to see the real truth. So let's continue with what Solomon Nelson was saying about the situation.
That's called straw manning. And then when he talks about adding semicolons
scientific.
to Mike's rough draft from 13 years ago, scientist Jeff presumably thinks that he's doing a line in witty caricature. Very funny, Jeff, because it's as if I should have known that the thesis published to the learned community on East Tennessee State University's official website was just a rough draft.
And that's something that he really dives into. So I'm going to fast forward here to 38 minutes in, and I want you guys, like, these are the important parts of the video. I mean, the whole video is important. These are the parts that I feel you guys should be really paying attention to fully grasp the situation so that you can start to see the real kind of person that Jeff Nippard is.
This is sanctimonious. In the very next...
And these are messages that were shared between Solomon and Jeff, and you can see at the bottom here, Jeff is basically shitting on him, shitting on his videos, and then being like, hey, by the way, keep this message private.
Sentence of his direct message. As far as I know, fair journalistic standards are to at least reach out to the party before publishing. First, I'm not a journalist. And second, Jeff's standard of ethics here is unreasonable. Do you think that a critic about to write a review of an essay published on the internet by an authoritative source first has to reach out to the author to ask, is that your final version or just a draft? What exorbitant labours does Jeff want to commit us to every time we read something?
And that's really important for you guys to understand. To put it in simpler terms, a movie comes out, a movie critic goes to see the movie, writes a review saying it's terrible, and then the movie studio goes, oh, well, actually, that wasn't the final version of the movie. A wrong version got sent to all of the movie theaters in the world. We're actually going to release the new version this week to make up for that. And you probably should have asked us before you critiqued the movie so we could have made sure that it was actually the final version. Like, that's literally what Jeff is saying to Solomon. And Solomon's response is very clear. Bro, this was uploaded to the website. It's been there for 13 years as the final version of the dissertation. Why am I supposed to be out here thinking that it could possibly not be the final version? It just doesn't make any sense. So up to this point in the video, I thought their interactions that they had were bad, not quite turned truly nasty yet, like he has here in the title. But after seeing the way Jeff used, abused, and basically dismissed all of the work that Solomon was hired to help him with his programs and publications, this is the kind of person that Jeff really is. This is the kind of person that you, Jeff's fans, who are probably watching my video, that you idolize. The person you see behind the mask, behind the scenes. This is the person that I met a little over 10 years ago and instantly thought to myself, probably not a good guy.
In our correspondence, Jeff's assertion that I reviewed only one program is a significant mischaracterization of our professional history. I was engaged on 2 separate occasions for paid consulting work. The first project involved a smaller review that was so well received that it led immediately to a much larger engagement involving the detailed analysis of multiple programs for a significant commercial publication. The second project alone was also much larger than a single program review. In both instances, the feedback on my contributions was explicitly positive, and the quality of my work is evidenced by the fact that I was hired a second time.
And you know, my biggest takeaway from this part of the video by Solomon Nelson is I would like to see the detailed analysis he did of multiple programs that were created by a guy who's Mr. Science, and for the most part should be able to create programs that don't need too much fine-tuning because that's what he's built his entire brand around. So I'll put the same question to you guys that I made a statement about in the beginning of the video. Do you really think that Jeff and Mike are science-based content creators, or do they use science as a brand identity?
A few moments later.
So while I was editing my video, Jeff literally just posted a new video on his YouTube channel. It's called I Cut My Workouts in Half and Grew. And so I immediately went to the comment section. And oh my God, guys, it's gonna be an interesting week. Let's just say that. Jeff, as always, giving quality content as a former client of Solomon Nelson. Solomon Nelson cut his clientele in half. Now Jeff is a former client. Here for what I'm sure will be wholesome and civilized comment section. As a former client of Solomon, I think you need to consult him on the rest of this one. It's going to be an interesting week.